where I've been involved with accessibility for many, many years. So today we're going to do a couple things, but you know what's really important to me is the overall feeling of a person with a disability. Everybody has the right to choice. Everybody has the right to make a contribution. And everybody has a right to creativity. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about possibilities and how people with disabilities can really be a part of all of our futures. So, in the disability world, as I go out to different clients and organizations, I am often asked, why should we do this? We are tight on resources. We are tight on funding. So I want to give you a brief, what I call a disability snapshot, that will give you a picture of what the world is today, and will give you some great arguments to take back in terms of supporting the access moving forward. In the Ron story, I thought about how to do this, and what was really significant to me is I know that many of you come from smaller organizations, smaller museums, where there is tight money, tight people, tight resources, growing demands, which makes it very difficult. You come to a wonderful organization like Ron and say, oh, you could never do that. But you know what? Resources are limited everywhere. And there is so much that we can do if we are committed, if we build our partnerships. So in sharing the Ron story with you, what I've done is I've tried to give you practical tips that you can take back and start using them right away to keep the momentum of our agenda on access moving forward. And then I want to finish off with possibilities. The I can do this attitude. Because we have to look at our possibilities and we have to broaden our vision so that we can experience and help others experience the wonderful world of museums. Now, in addition to this, I'll be using a few examples from the Art Gallery of Ontario as well, since I've also had the privilege of working with them. So when we talk about the disability snapshot, and we try to answer the question, why should I spend time? Why should I spend resources? I'm too busy anyway. There are basically three reasons why we have to move forward. First is the legislation, which we talked about already. Second is it's good economics. And thirdly, the barriers to independence need to be broken down so people with disabilities can participate in all areas of life, including their cultural life. So to start off, we know a little bit about the legislation, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. I'm not going to talk about that. And the customer service standard, you mentioned that, and the integrated standard, which is now law, which deals with employment and transportation, information, and communication, which we will have to be looking at in the future, deadlines are over the next 10 years. So I will leave that to the other experts in the round tables, and you can come up with your specific questions. So let's just look at why this accessibility is important. And let's look at some of the numbers. 1 in 7 persons has a disability, which is pretty high, and it's going to grow even higher in our aging population because many of us are going to experience some of the challenges that a person with a disability does have as we grow older. 3 to 1,000 babies are born with hearing loss. 600,000 Canadians have self-identified with vision loss, and that doesn't count those of us who wear contacts or glasses. 70% of disabilities are hidden. That's something a lot of people don't know. And yet often when we think of disability, we automatically go to the symbol of the wheelchair. But only 6% of people who have a physical disability actually use a wheelchair. So when we're talking about accessibility and the AODA, it's really important to keep in mind all of those hidden disabilities. World Bank did a study many years ago, and they found out that people which is a pretty high number. In terms of the economic impact, we influence the spending power of 13 to 17 others. So if I'm going to go to a restaurant, I'm going to pick C5, the restaurant here, because I know it's accessible. And I will probably rate 1, 2, 3, or 4 people with me. Touching, touching, touching. That's revenue in our context. And so we have to look at it in that kind of framework, that it really is a good economic argument. 75% of people can travel who have a disability. There's a new study from Carol, which is an organization in Quebec that promotes accessible travel, and they just came up with a study this spring. And they say that people with disabilities represent an estimated $1 billion spending in the tourism and cultural market. And with the aging demographics, that's going to grow. So this is a growing market, and we're in the tourism business. We want to attract people to our sites. So if we're accessible, that's a market we can count on. Another thing is, access is good for everyone. How many of you have sat and watched the number of people who use umbrella into a building and they don't seem to have a visible disability? Or transportation. If you're on the subway or you're on the bus, they now have audio announcements. It really helps when it's dark out, it's snowing, or it's really crowded. You know your street. So not only does it help those people who have disability, but access is really good for everyone. Now, because we've all been involved in the AODA, I'm sure you're very familiar with the barriers to independence that prevent full participation. And I think one of the great factors about the AODA is that it looks at all areas of key daily living. And that's what's really important. So, there's no buttons on the doors, there's small print brochures, there's no screen contrast in terms of technology, there's inadequate, reliable transportation. But attitude is one of the biggest barriers. This spring, the UN released the first World Report on Disability. And what they said is, it's the way society treats people with disabilities that matters most. And that's what we have to be really conscious of, as well as all of the other indicators. So, what I think is important is to check on your own attitudes. We've still got a lot of negative stereotyping out there that we're trying to overcome. Now, we're coming up to another election in the U.S., but I still go back to the day President Obama was inaugurated. Dick Cheney had a back problem. And he arrived at the inauguration. I don't know how many of you saw this, watched the inauguration on TV. He arrived at the inauguration, and the announcer from CNN said, "Isn't it too bad that Dick Cheney had to end his career in a wheelchair?" And I heard that, and I thought, this is the message that's going out to the world. Again, it's the negative stereotyping that we have to be careful of. And we all get sucked into that. When I worked for Royal Bank, I traveled with my manager to quality management conferences, and we had to go to the States, to Florida. And when I travel, I have a disability, I walk with 2 canes. And when I travel in airports, because of the distances, I use a wheelchair. I'm sitting in the wheelchair, and he's standing beside me. And the porter comes up and says, "Can she walk?" And he says, "Yeah, she can walk." "Can she get up on those stairs on that trolley up there?" "Oh, yeah, she can do that." "And what about the other end? She can't get down." "Oh, yeah, sure, she can do that." And I looked at him, and I said, "And I can talk, too." And you know what? He was absolutely mortified. Because he was so committed to diversity at the Royal Bank, committed to employees with disabilities. I trained him. And for you, all of you in this room, you are all leaders, and you are all champions. And that means you can model the behavior. And many times, people don't even realize that they're using language that does not promote dignity. Handicap. Does anybody know where the word handicap comes from? It comes from medieval times, when one of the kings came out, all the soldiers came out from war. It wasn't a great war. Lots of people, lots of the men had injuries. So he decreed that it was all right, because they couldn't fight and be in the army anymore, that they could be on street corners, hat in hand, and beg so they could continue to exist. So we look at words like that are labels for people with disabilities. And you can model that a person is a person first. It's a person with a disability. It's a person who uses a wheelchair. It's a person who has vision loss. And we always have to put the person first. When I travel, I'm waiting to pre-board, what do I hear a lot of people say? Bring the wheelchair over here. I go, person, the person here. Because that's who I am first, a person. And you know, one of the biggest compliments some people think that I get is saying, Christine, you are so independent, I forget you have a disability. You're just like a normal person. Well, I just go back, first of all, thank you, I guess. But that's not a compliment to me. First of all, what's a normal person these days? The uniqueness is what we celebrate. And we think a lot of the language has gone into the past. And I was training at the Art Gallery in Hamilton, and I was talking about language, and one of the participants came up to me after, and he said, you don't have retard on your list. And I said, people still use that? He said, yes, my brother still gets called that today. So part of all this around the disability picture is making people aware of some of the things they're doing. Because like my manager, he just wasn't aware. And once he became aware, oh boy, he remembered it. And he shifted his behavior. And we moved to behaviors of dignity, support for independence, and integration. So, I became involved in law when my name was put forward by the Department of Museum volunteers to be their representative on the Board of Trustees. And when I arrived, they had talked about access in terms of building code. And the DMV had worked to try to get some access initiatives going. But it was a great opportunity, and this is what we have to watch for. Good timing, because the plans for the Crystal were just in the process of being completed, and the new building was being renovated. So at the first board meeting, I put on my sweetest smile, and at the end of the board meeting, any other agenda items? Yes, Mr. President. I said, we have an opportunity here to go beyond the building. We have an opportunity to make this museum a museum for all people. I would like to take on the leadership role to make our museum accessible for everyone. Will you support me in this? Of course, they were absolutely enthusiastic about it and said yes. And that became the beginning start of the education for the board. So, in the long story, when I looked at all of the details, and considering I only have 10 minutes up here, I broke it down into 3 areas. Build champions and partnerships, tell the world, and believe in possibilities. So when we're talking about champions and partnerships, the really important question is, how do I influence my museum? There are many ways. We talked about attitude and raising awareness. You could be the models for language. You can raise the awareness at your board, at your meetings. Do a process map. We did this at the Art Gallery of Ontario. We took a morning and we plotted out what does a person who has vision loss have to do to have a successful, enjoyable, and rewarding experience of the AGO. From sitting down, making the decision, I want to go to the AGO, to booking a ticket, arriving, going to the hours, going to the restaurant, going to the gift shop, and leaving. We did this for every group that had a disability. And that's a very good learning because it also gives you knowledge in terms of how that will impact your own institution. And when people hear how it will impact my museum, then they'll pay more attention. And that's when the shift starts to happen. Take advantage of all the training that's required for the AODA. We have to do this. So have people learn that way. Bringing people with disabilities to your organization. That's one of the best ways that we can learn from each other. Include everyone. Volunteers, staff people, I know some of you may be one-person places, but include everyone, right from top to bottom of your organization. Focus the learning to a specific group. So, example, I asked the president of the board, I said, I would like to do a report at every board meeting, is that all right? He said, oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. So for 6 years at every board meeting, I talked about access. And I structured it in 3 ways. I talked what we had accomplished since the last board meeting. I talked about what we wanted to accomplish. And I told one human interest story. Because they're interested in economics. If we can bring more people into my organization, our revenue increases. They're interested in the plans of what we want to do before the next board meeting. But it's the story that has to shape the attitude. When I tell them how I observed a young boy who had vision loss go up to the dinosaur on the 2nd floor, the model, and actually feel, and I can never say the dinosaur names, actually feel what this dinosaur looked like to that individual, and watch his face light up, because he got it. That's the human interest story that says to people, that individual has a right to have a cultural experience according to their own unique way. You're talking to frontline staff, if you have frontline staff, you talk about how important their behavior is so that people can leave feeling good about their experience, so that they will come back again and again and again. And they'll tell their friends, and they'll bring their friends. So when someone says to me, Christine, where would you like to go? We've got a free Sunday afternoon. I go, gee, let's go to the Rock. Because I had a really good seamless time. And I was like anybody else. Accountability, it's really important to set your goals and to also set realistic goals. I was fortunate because after a year on board, the mom hired Cheryl Duncan to take on the responsibility of accessibility. And so we worked together to move the agenda forward. But one of the things that we have to be cautious of is to make sure that if someone is assigned the responsibility of accessibility, we have to make sure the message gets out that everyone is responsible. It's not just that person. We all have to own that agenda. Building champions and partnerships, listen to your visitors. Notice John Ray is here. John and I have known each other for many, many years, and he has given such valuable input into the ROM and the AGO and many, many other cultural institutions. The customer service regulation requires that you have a feedback system. So make sure you take that feedback and do something with it. The ROM had focus groups. We brought people in, and we heard what they had to say. And in all the training that we did on the customer service standard, I asked people, how can you make the visitors have a better experience? And we took all of those ideas, and they became another body. And the other thing that's important is let people know what happens to the feedback. Because that's what builds champions, and that's what keeps the momentum going. The ROM also involved the community by forming an advisory group that looked at plans and that gave us advice. And you know, we had a really key impact. One of the biggest fights we had was that the city did not want to give us a drop-off area in front of the entrance. They wanted the drop-off area to be on the side on Queens Park Crescent, where the old entrance was. We took this to our committee, and the committee said, that's ridiculous, especially in winter. There's no way I can get out of my car or my transportation vehicle and walk all the way around to the front entrance, leaving the drop-off area. They dug in their heels, and they were concerned. We finally mobilized. Cheryl mobilized, I went to the mayor's office, and one of the key things that moved it forward was our advisory team told us if there is not an easy way to get into the ROM, we will not come. And that is a record. And that was my microphone. Get too excited about that. It's really important also when you involve the community to do partnerships. So, for example, the ROM has done a fabulous partnership with George Marks College, whom you see is here, and they work with the School of Deaf and Deafblind Studies. And what they do is every Thursday of every month, I think it's the first Thursday of every month, they offer tours with an ASL facilitator. These tours are free with admission to the ROM, so there's no extra cost for this. But this is an example of a great partnership between the community, because it helps the students in George College, and it increases what we can offer to our visitors with disabilities. The AGO has a new perspectives tour, and this is where they work with organizations who work with people who have mental health issues. They will find out what the issues are, what the person is interested in, what these individuals are interested in, and the organization will bring those people to the art gallery to tour. Again, it's another way to bring the community into your organization, and it builds partnerships. And what I'm hearing back from everybody is it's a great way for everybody to broaden their perspective and learn more about people with disabilities. Celebrate success. It's really important that you recognize the success and that you acknowledge people and that even the little ones, because again, when people know we're moving forward, that will keep the momentum going. So in terms of some cautions, there's lots of different interests out there, so be sure you focus and have a unified approach. They are complex issues. So, for example, flashing lights for an emergency alert system might prompt someone to have a seizure. So, if there are conflicting issues, stay focused on what the purpose is. And stay focused on the value and work at getting a compromise that will hopefully work for everybody. And we talked about setting goals. Make sure that your measures are targeted. Determine your So look at what are the top priorities that we want to do in this museum. And what we did is we followed the format of the AODA. We followed what the deadlines were, and we followed the format and made sure that we met those first. Tell the world is important. When I travel the province with my business, so many people don't know about the access that is available for people with disabilities. So make sure you tell them internally and externally. Get your key messages very clear. We support access. Here's what we have to offer. And make sure that it's built into any presentations that you give to the community or to your staff. It takes people 6 to 8 times to hear a message and to be able to internalize it. Keep access on the radar screen. We had it on every board meeting, put it on your budget meetings, and put it on your management meetings. And the ROM also had a budget line for every exhibit, money allocated to accessibility. Doesn't matter how much, but money allocated. Link it to your strategic plan so you can measure success. And hold events. One of the great events we have is the Out From Under event, where we partnered with Ryerson and we brought in the exhibit on the history of people with disabilities in Canada. This event was first class. We had His Honor the Lieutenant Governor attend and give a speech. Connie, who runs a catering business, developed hors d'oeuvres that were easy to eat for people who may have physical challenges. And we had 300 people come, 3/4 of whom were people from the community, the disabled community. It shifted the mindset in the ROM, and it shifted the mindset in the community. Believe in possibilities. Watch for opportunities. You never know when they're going to come. I got stuck in a bathroom downstairs in the early days because there was no button on the door. I couldn't reach it, and there was nobody in the washer. Brought that forward, and we altered the entrance to the washroom, so that's not an issue. So watch for opportunities. Don't get overwhelmed by everything. Please keep a really realistic scope in mind. Again, we used the plan based on the AODA, and we did it one step at a time, which is critical. And brainstorm creative solutions, and go outside your world of museums. I'm an adventure traveler. I walk with 2 canes. I can't get on the Zodiac. You usually go down the steps and stairs on the side of the ship and hop into the Zodiac. It doesn't work for me. Creative solution, put me on the Zodiac on board and lift me over the edge. That's me, coming down. Didn't have to do any stairs. But that's what I mean by a creative solution. We traveled to Labrador. Small town, no roads, no cars. I wanted to see the town. Too hard to piggyback, too far to walk. Venture Canada person said, how do you feel about wheelbarrows? That's what we call a creative solution. Not a lot of money, but a creative solution. There's lots of great ideas that you can do, and here's another one of what the AGO and ROM are doing. Tactile tours, overnight accessible sleepovers, large ASL tours. So, in terms of my words of wisdom, don't reinvent the wheel. I have it on good authority that the ROM and the AGO are willing to help. The AGO used the ROM as its model, and it is strongly believed that it can be the model for others. So go to these institutions, talk to the people, tour, and see what they've developed. And when you quote that parade from the AGO, plagiarize. That's what's important. Keep the dialogue going. Once you start talking to people, keep talking. Access is a long journey, and the success of the ROM is that it continues to bring visitors in, to hear new ideas, to explore solutions. It is a long journey. So a few personal points for you. Have tenacity. It's a really tough job. It's not going to be over quick. It's going to take a long time, and you have to have a strong foundation and the tenacity to keep going. Rick Hilliard, our military leader, said, courage to believe in yourself, to take a stand, and to take action. Einstein said, look at the world through a different lens and be brave enough to describe what you see. Be bold to do what will make a difference. So my message to the cultural leaders today, from my learning in Iran and my years of the journey here, there's a really big learning curve. So please be patient. There's a learning curve as well for the people in your community and in the places that you work. So be patient, start taking steps, and build and be proud of the foundation that you've started. To students, I think there are students here today. You are our future leaders. When you go out on your career, please ask the questions, model the behaviors, and look for opportunities for inclusiveness. Really reiterate, we are all responsible for the changes that we need to make to open up our museums to all people and people with disabilities. So we experience art, we experience the museum artifacts and the collections in different ways. And this is one of the important things, is we have to acknowledge the uniqueness of everyone. Everyone has a right to choice. Everyone has a right to contribute, and everyone has a right to creativity. Mary asked me when we were talking about the session, she said, so what's been the impact for you as a visitor to Iran and this ancestry? When I come into the ROM, I now see people with visible disabilities. When I come into the ROM, I'm proud of what this team has done. It's not an individual, it's the team at all levels that has worked to make it accessible. My visit is seamless. I can make choices about where I go, I can contribute, and I can enjoy the collections the way I want. I'm a person here, I'm valued here, and I'm a part of this community. Boy, does that feel good. And I can do all that without struggle. So please, when you go back, learn from the ROM, learn from the speakers you're going to hear today, and look at the possibilities so that we can all work together and make Ontario accessible by 2025, and we can make people with disabilities a part of all of our museums. Have a great day.